Hey, coming to you live from our Uptown studios. We've changed locations for tonight. Thanks for everybody for joining us. This is the ChiPy main event. Apologies, I've got a little bit of a feedback here. Give me just a second. Too many windows, too many windows. All right, there we go. We're here. It's ChiPy, it's large, it's live, and it's starting off with a bang. So thanks, everybody. My name is Ray Berg. I am an organizer and board member with ChiPy. And I think you've seen me speak recently a couple of times tonight. I'm changing roles. I'm going to be the MC for tonight. So let's just jump in right to the announcements. Tonight, we are going to have a couple of fantastic talks covering some really interesting perspectives. So I'm not going to get in too much. I'm going to let the folks speak for themselves as they go and talk about this stuff. We are coming to you live on YouTube, and we are going to be taking chat comments on the side, and during the conversation, you'll be able to have see the talks and then be able to provide feedback and ask questions of our speakers. It's going to be pretty good. I'm very excited about it. So let's get in and let's focus on those fantastic talks that come after my announcements. So let's get the announcements out of the way. ChiPy is an organization that's founded in 2003. It's been around for a long time here in the city of Chicago. It is, I think, the largest user group, I think. That's a good question if we are the largest in Chicago, but we're definitely one of the largest Python user groups in the world. We're also one of the most active. When we go to PyCon every year, we get to meet really awesome folks from around the world, and it's really fun to kind of see how much content and how many ideas we're producing that are affecting Python writ large. So it's really a neat place to be. It's been a fantastic place, and it's an all-volunteer organization that is supported by our generous sponsors. If you don't know, you should join a couple of different things, and we'll talk through the different options that are available to you. But you should know who we are. And so this is the board. This is a big announcement for us. We just had our elections, and we have voted for our new slate of officers or board members for the year. Every year, we rotate off half of our board members, and the other half stay on. So this year, we're welcoming a couple of new board members. Aaron Elmquist is joining. Chris Lutke, Kevin Nasto, and Sopan Mian are all joining the board, and so I hope that you can all give them a round of applause. These are new volunteers willing to help stand at the helm and guide ChiPy through the next year ahead. I am the retiring chair. It's been a pleasure serving, but this will be the last time that I get to say that. So hopefully you guys have fun and enjoy this new group. ChiPy is not just this meeting. We are many things. We are notably the special interest groups that you'll see have meetings throughout the month. This meeting happens every second Thursday, but there are tons more things that we do. So we have special interest groups. We do a project night on Thursdays where you can come in, and we actually are looking for a new organizer because I said I'm stepping down, but we meet in our ChiPy Town. The gather space that we can have virtual conversations and break up and walk around the room together. It's a really cool place, and I hope you'll join us in there next week on Thursday. We also have a buddy mentorship program, which I'll talk a little bit more and show you a screenshot of, which is run by Zach Rosenberg, and we have the Python lunch break with Ali Sivji, who's usually here broadcasting from his Lakeview studio. I don't know if he has more than one studio. The SIGs are finance, data, web dev, algorithms, all the things you could possibly want. I want to highlight algorithms because that's the one that's been reading really, really regularly, and it focuses on things that people really care about. Sorry, that's my work pager. Lots of things going on today. So the algorithm SIG is geared toward helping people try to understand sort of those hard problems that we've always talked about in computer science and specifically in interviewing. A lot of times people are coming into Python and they're coming from lots of different places, and they haven't necessarily had the experience of connecting to like core computer science concepts, algorithms, data structures, all that kind of stuff. Algorithms is a really cool place, this special interest group, to have those kind of conversations and to buff up those skills if you're going in for job applications, or if you just want to learn more about Python to be ready for the next advent of code. Next up, I mentioned the mentorship program. We have a mentorship program. If you go to chipy.org and you click on the mentorship at the top, you can check this out. We have a page dedicated to helping you find and talk about becoming mentors. And this is an outcropping from our previous mentorship program, which was a cadre-based, cohort-based model. And now, fortuitously, we've pivoted to this just before COVID hit. And so we've been able to do this without having in-person gatherings and without having to do that direct in-person one-on-one mentorship. So you can find a mentor, you can advertise to become a mentor. I highly recommend it. Mentorship has always been the core of why I've belonged to ChiPy. And it's an incredible program. It's an incredible opportunity to meet other people and to mentor. If you're a junior dev looking to get a couple of extra skills, or if you're a junior dev who wants to mentor other people so that you can become a senior dev, this is a great opportunity for you. We also have a job board, which is available on our, again, chipy.org, our flagship web app. And you can go in there and take a look at the jobs. You can, if you're an employer, you can submit jobs. And we use this to help fund our program. So it's a really cool way to get going. It's a brand new feature we've added to the website in the past couple weeks, or I guess months at this point. Boy, time flies. It's really neat. Go check it out. There's a couple of postings. I think the newest one is within the last week. It's a really neat way to kind of see what's happening in careers in Python in Chicago. This meeting, like all of our meetings, and anything that uses our platform or extends beyond, we expect our participants, we expect the people that participate here to follow our code of conduct. And it's designed to really create a safe place where people can all feel that they belong without worrying about things like weird behavior or other things. So really recommend that you read it. The key thing is to focus on being considerate, kind, professional, and try to leave the other stuff at the door. So thank you so much for abiding by the code of conduct, and we really enjoy having a space that's very comforting and welcoming for all folks. So for all of these events and more, you can keep track on this brand new feature that we've added to the ChiPy webpage. I call it the train track model. Shout out to Sopan Mian for her developing this really cool interface. You can keep track, you can RSVP for events, and this is all on our upcoming events page. We've got a lot more coming, and there'll be more events added as we get closer to the upcoming dates. If you want to follow us other ways, you can check out Slack, which on chipy.org, there's a big Slack icon. Click that button, and you can join our Slack community where we do chatting and joining in different channels for interest groups. And that's where a lot of our kind of development, collaboration, and off-hours work happens. So really, really recommend that. If you're on Twitter, you can follow us at Chicago Python. This is a pretty active place. Sivji does a pretty good job of making sure that it's got not just our stuff, but also really cool news articles and feeds from elsewhere. One of the things that he is really good at, and I'm not as good at, Sivji as looking at what's going on in Python. So recent announcements, we see that 3.10.0, the alpha release 6 is now out and available for testing, including the pattern matching operator. So some good news coming for Pythonistas out there. Hopefully folks are able to try that out. Again, they recommend not production. Do not roll that out to prod. One thing that has been happening in Python lately that I've been really excited about has been the logo sharing that PyLadies has done, where there's a PyLadies chapter here in Chicago that we are big fans of, and there are PyLadies chapters around the world. It's probably the most impressive, I think it is, the most impressive network of folks across the world. And they've been sharing a lot of different pictures, and a lot specifically from Brazil. Brazil is a very active Python community, and PyLadies has really done an amazing job of sponsoring growth there. And so Paraíba and Ribeirão and Preto, Ribeirão Preto, Manaus, and then I'm trying to remember what the other one was. Minas Gerais. I'm not as good as I don't speak Portuguese, so I apologize if I'm butchering the names. And of course, PyLadies Brazil, which is the icon on the right. These are just some examples of these really cool icons coming out of PyLadies, and it comes at a pretty interesting time, I think. So maybe this is uncharacteristic for us, but as we're sort of in the United States and a few other places, we're kind of seeing this decline, getting to some maybe possibly record low situations for COVID. Brazil is still on the climb in some places. And when I think about the people that we've met from Brazil who've come up and joined us here in Chicago, I've been really touched by like how impressive the Brazil Python community is, and they're part of the Brazil community at large. And I think it's a good time to call for anybody in our community, if we can help out. Direct Relief is just one of the charities I think that's trying to focus on COVID relief stuff, and they're focusing on Brazil as well. If you can find some time or some money that you would be able to put into this, I think it'd be really great and good for our community to support our wonderful Pythonista friends in Brazil. So please take some time. It doesn't have to be directly if we're not recommending that specifically, but I do know that they're doing work in Brazil. But yeah, hope everybody's staying safe and staying well, and we're really proud of those Brazil groups that are doing awesome Python stuff. So with that, the things that I'm proud of are largely responsible and come out of the support from our sponsors. So we have actually one of our speakers tonight is Jfrog. Has brought us a cool talk, and Braintree has been a long-time sponsor. So full disclosure, I work for Braintree. Both of these sponsors are critical. They've been providing us support during COVID, which is really awesome. But I'm very excited about this. Everybody should be excited about this. We have a new announcement tonight, and that's that it's not new in the sense that they've been here before, but Zoro.com is coming back for a really cool, giant new sponsorship for us, and I could not be happier. To talk about this a little bit more and to kind of focus in on Zoro for those that don't know, I have Chris on the line. I'm going to bring Chris into the call. And Chris, I'd love it. Hello, Chris.
Hey, Ray, and hey, ChiPy user group. Good evening, everyone.
I love it, Chris. Would you be willing, if I pop myself off the screen for a little bit, would you be willing to talk about Zoro and what makes Zoro so cool?
Of course. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Ray. My name is Chris Molnar. I lead our software engineering team at Zoro, and we are super excited to be a new sponsor of ChiPy. Like Ray said, we have done this in the past, but it fell off for a while, and I felt we should bring it back. So we are super excited to get started. We are hoping to host some events for you guys when we get back to the office. We have an office in Buffalo Grove and an office in Chicago in the Ogilvy building. So between the two, or both at once, we hope to host events for you guys when we get back. A little briefly about Zoro. Zoro is about a 10-year-old company. Started as a subsidiary of Grainger, big Fortune 500 company, but we are much smaller, different business model, different culture. We are essentially a B2B e-commerce company in the MRO space, and MRO means manufacturing, repair, and operations. So check out Zoro.com, and you can find just about any tool and or operational device that you would ever need to run your business. Like I said, we have a different business model than Grainger. We are building something we call the endless assortment, which means we are putting as many SKUs as we possibly can on our website and bringing traffic to it based on that, kind of like Amazon, but more B2B. So it's exciting. We're a strong, growing company at the moment. Knock on wood, we did fairly well through pandemic and are coming out of it even stronger. On the whole, Zoro is about 500 people between our two offices. Like I said, Buffalo Grove and Chicago in the Ogilvy building. Our technology group is about 140 people. We have a software engineering, like I said, that's my team. We have a data engineering. We have a tech operations team, digital product architecture, and PMO. Pretty straightforward. We are a big Python shop and have been for many years. New developments there for us are we have a fairly new release last year, microservices architecture, all built in Python, which is super exciting, and we're building on it this year. I believe even our data science team uses Python to some extent, and shout out to Zach Rosenberg, who is a coworker of mine at Zoro and a prominent member of ChiPy. So happy to say that. We are growing, like I said, we're a healthy company. We're looking to hire more folks this year. We currently have 4 software engineering roles open. So any interest, hit up or go to our website, Zoro.com, or get me directly, and hopefully I can leave my contact info with Ray so you guys can reach out to me directly. And lastly, just wanted to tell you about some cool projects that we have going in flight at Zoro. One big one is, which my team is leading, is a headless e-com platform project. We are getting ourselves off an old monolithic e-commerce platform and building our own. We bought a tool for that, and we actually built a custom Python SDK to power that new platform. So that's super exciting. We're migrating our front end off of Vue.js, or onto Vue.js, sorry, and using Vuetify as our design system. And currently getting off the ground a project to build our own recommendations engine, which is super exciting. And later in the year, we hope to be building our own search engine. So hope I can excite a few of you about Zoro to learn more. And I'm happy to answer any questions about Zoro. And again, we're super excited to be a sponsor and looking forward to hosting events and meeting some of you in person when we do get back to the office.
That's great. Thanks so much, Chris. And again, thank you so much for sponsoring. It's a big deal for us that Zoro's been able to step in and help us cover costs for putting these programs on.
Yeah, our privilege, Ray, and thanks for having me join your meet tonight.
Thank you so much. So yeah, you've got it all. You've got programs, you've got events, you've got really fantastic sponsors like Zoro. And I think, I hope that you're going to have fun here tonight and learn a little bit. So let's talk about what we're going to actually get to by way of content for our talks. I've lost my section here. All right. So the 2 talks that are going to be presented in order, let me make this a little bigger, is going to be Baruch is going to talk about DevOps for developers. That'll be your first talk. And then Sam Scott is going to talk about adding structure and talking about Python and SQLAlchemy. So as we go through these talks, I encourage you to leave feedback. Clap emojis are fantastic. Thanks to Caesar for that. Yeah, leave comments, leave stuff in here, and we will be able to have, maybe for each speaker, depending on how the time goes, some time to answer your questions and to talk about what's next. We will prompt for questions as you go, but think about them as you're listening to the great talks. I think you're going to be excited. There's some really fun. The speakers are fantastic tonight. So I think that's all I've got. One last thing. Sorry. Afterwards, we'd love to have you at our after party. So you're welcome to stick around. It's an easy place to get to. All you got to do is go to http://chippy.town. You can try it out right now if you'd like to. It's an open space. It's there all the time. ChiPy is our place to kind of gather and walk around. As you can see, you get a little sprite and you can walk around. I think it's like they say it's Pokemon meets Zoom is the idea. But the idea is that you can kind of mingle and talk with different folks. So we'll be there as soon as this program ends. I will be headed straight to Chippy Town, and I hope to see you there. We can talk about other things. So, yeah, our first talk. Baruch, I'm going to bring you up. I'm going to get rid of my slides because mine are way less interesting than yours, and I'm going to pull you onto the screen here. Hi, Baruch.
Hello, and thank you for having me. That's exciting. That's like all the members, board of directors, and this kind of stuff. This is like, I'm impressed. This is heavy. This is not like your neighborhood meetup organized by 2 people who have no idea what they are doing. Very, very impressive.
Hey, listen, we're glad that you're impressed. I'm impressed by your amazing backdrop there. This is quite the setup you've got.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is what we do in the last year, right? It's not that we have any other option. I would prefer and be in much less fancy environment, but with you in person, I have to say. Although, by, now hearing all the boards and all this stuff, I expect in-person venue to be as grand as all the nomenclature around it.
I hope it's true. I think as we heard from Chris, maybe there are some great opportunities to meet in person. So, yeah. Baruch, can you tell us just a quick question? Can I get to know you? How did you get into Python? What's your experience with Python?
Right. So I have a very, very limited experience with Python. I know great things about Python. I know why people love it. And my son, he's now in college. His first language was Python. And thanks to that, he is excited about software engineering. And I think that's great. And it actually makes sense. And if someone asks me, hey, how do I start? My answer will also be Python. I mean, that's like another funny anecdote. My wife, she's not, she's doing marketing. She's doing a site search engine optimization. And she was living with software engineer for like 15 years, and she kind of have strange ideas of how software engineers how they are. And she's like, no, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a developer, I don't love this thing. But now she needs to write some algorithms, to tweak, to determine how to go around search engine optimization. She started to learn Python, and I'm going like, aha, you're writing code, and she's like, no, it's Python. It's Python. It doesn't count. And I think it's a great compliment, frankly. I think that's what makes it like approachable, easy. People don't feel like they need a degree in computer science in order to write in Python, and this is awesome.
That is a really great story. I've not thought about it in that sense, and yeah, you're right. It doesn't feel like it sometimes, right? It doesn't. Exactly. When I'm writing my day to day, it doesn't feel like it feels like programming in the sense of like, oh, I'm really struggling. That's very cool. Well, with that, I'm just going to leave it to you to talk to us about your great topic tonight. So I will see you on the other side of your talk.
Thank you, Ray. The only request I have for you is when you see comments coming in and you think, that makes sense. I try to do my talk as provocative as possible. It's just a bunch of conspiracy theories that I'm going to throw in the air. I hope people will react. It's built for triggering people, and if you see that people are triggered, bring them on. It will be fun. Just show the comments on the screen. It will be a lot of fun.
All right, I'll pop the comments up as they come in.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
All right, let's do the thing. Today we're going to try and answer the question: what DevOps is for developers, or maybe it's even something against them. So every DevOps talk, and I bet by now you heard a few, start with the question, what the hell is DevOps? And you would say, you know what, this is getting ridiculous. DevOps has been around for 10 years. How we still battle with this question every time? And the answer is, it doesn't matter how many times you repeat what DevOps is, people have no idea what DevOps is, right? We're going to answer this question as well, and then we're going to show whether it helps the developers or hurts them in a way. So this is me. My name is Baruch. I am the Chief Sticker Officer in JFrog. In better times, I would come in person, bring awesome stickers and a bunch of cool swag, and we would celebrate together. But for now, the only useful piece of this slide is my Twitter handle, @jbaruch. I hope I will trigger you enough that you will want to fight with me on Twitter. Do that. This is my California, but I guess also Chicago disclaimer. This is from a great book called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. If you work in a multicultural environment, which you are, you have to read this book. It's exactly about how to go about people from different cultures. You can see here that the most emotional and expressive and conversational people are from Israel and Russia. I managed to be from both. So that means that I'm going to offend some people during this talk. I will probably not even pay attention. So, yep, just bear with me. And as I mentioned, if you are triggered, let's talk. The most important slide of today is this one. When you go to jfrog.com/, show notes, you will find all the slides uploaded already there. You don't need to take pictures, screenshots, or whatever. All the slides are there. Just go there. The video, this is obviously recorded and broadcasted and everything. I will grab it from YouTube after the end of the meetup and stack the video in there, so you'll have everything in one place. All the links, including, for example, the culture map, the book that I just mentioned, is there as well. The place to comment, to rate, and a very, very nice raffle with 2 very sweet prizes for you. We're going to talk about that in the end. So as you can see, if you forget this simple link, jfrog.com show notes, it's also in the bottom of every slide. What else is there? My Twitter handle, in case you decide to follow me later, and hashtags DevOps, and I don't know if ChiPy is the official hashtag. Let's make it so if that's not the case. All right, now let's talk about why I'm here speaking with you about DevOps. Well, I started as a developer, very long time ago, 2004, Java developer. All my career, I like the first half of my career, I wrote in Java. Then I was a consultant, wrote in Java, architect, wrote in Java. Really a developer. Then JFrog came along, became a thing. DevOps became a thing. JFrog is now doing tools for DevOps. So DevOps is what I breathe and eat now. So I think I'm in the position in which I'm, as a software developer, still can see through the whole DevOps thing and talk to you very frankly of what DevOps is for developers. Now, what I'm going to tell you now is that this entire DevOps thing is a plot organized by ops people to solve their problems. And I have proofs. Proof number one, the Phoenix Project. For those of you who don't know, the Phoenix Project is the book that you read when you want to understand what DevOps is. It's a novel, is very easy reading. It's not like technical material. And the story goes that there was a guy that worked in a failing company, and then he invented DevOps and turned the company around. The company had amazing success, and he became the future CEO. That's kind of the story. We can learn about the main characters in the book by looking at the cover. And let's see who are the main characters, the main protagonists in the story of success of DevOps. This is Patty. She's director of IT service support. She is Ops. Wes, director of distributed technology Ops. He's Ops. Sarah, that's the antagonist, and she is sales. Steve, he's the CEO. Dick, he's the CFO. Great. Here, Bill Palmer is the main protagonist of the story. He is the guy who invents DevOps and wins. Who he is? He is a VP of IT Ops. Who else do we have here? Eric, board member, fine. Brent. Brent is the main technical actor in the book. He is like the top technology dog. And he is obviously lead sysadmin, very opsy. And then there's John, who is the Chief Information Security Officer. Now, you look at this picture and you say, like, someone is missing. Not a single developer on the main roles in a story of how DevOps is invented. Now, of course, there are developers in the book, but you need to remember they are not the nice guys there. Most of the plot, they throw their software from their silo over the fence to the ops silo, and their job is done. Ops people need to figure out how to deploy this crap. They're suffering, and then eventually they invent DevOps and overcome the problems that they have with the tool that they invented, with the methodology that they invented. Now, you don't believe me that it's all ops plot? I have another proof for you. The next book that you're going to read after the Phoenix Project is the DevOps Handbook. DevOps Handbook is technical, down-to-earth, how to implement DevOps. Who are the authors? Let's see. Pretty much same guys. Jin Kim, he is the author of the Phoenix Project. You can see how the Phoenix Project cover is incorporated inside the cover of DevOps Handbook. This is kind of continuation. And Jin Kim, he's the author of the Phoenix Project and the co-author of DevOps Handbook. Who else is there? Great folks, amazing folks. Patrick Dubois, the guy who invented the term DevOps. And he is a huge authority in the DevOps world. He was system architect. That's like an ops position. Jez Humble, this is like a legend. Jez Humble wrote a book inventing the term continuous delivery. What's his background? Deputy Director of Delivery Architecture. Again, ops. And John Willis. one of the co-founders of DevOps, the founder, co-fathers, the father of DevSecOps. He used to work in a company called Ops Code that then became Chef. He is a very, very ops, very, very ops person. All right. So now we Google what is DevOps. We Google what is DevOps, and we look who are the people who preach to us what DevOps is. Let's look at that. We start with New Relic. New Relic is an ops company. They do, what do? They do observability, ops person. Then Amazon Web Services. Amazon Web Services, they actually a cloud platform that provide ops services. CollabNet, it's a mixed bag. The Agile admins teaching what DevOps is. Wikipedia, fine. Atlassian is one of the biggest DevOps companies. And then Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure is, again, a cloud platform, which is super, super ops. So I think by now I convinced you that whenever you see DevOps, it's actually ops. There are ops people behind it that push their idea. Why? Why it is important for ops people to come with the idea of DevOps and kind of rebrand themselves to DevOps? What's going on? Let's look for answers. How do I switch my job from sysadmin to DevOps? And question in Quora. Let's see the answers. Here's one answer. They talk about, well, you need to Linux fundamentals, that's like system administration, cloud computing, again, all ops, Point number 6, Gits, Chef, Maven, Jenkins, Puppet, Docker. So basically, if you are an sysadmin and you learn Gits and a bunch of other tools, boom, you are DevOps. Not only that, you also get a very hefty raise because system administrators get X in salary, DevOps engineers 50% more, right? And the demand is huge. You can see how only in the United States we have more than 14,000 ads for DevOps engineers. And you remember the people who preached us what DevOps is? Hey, they now make money for certifications for the same thing, for DevOps. It looks like they invented their own industry and now they make money out of it. But it's actually a wrong way to look at it. And it's a wrong way to look at it because it looks like we confuse cause and effect. Because obviously 10 years ago, when DevOps started, when the Phoenix project was written, when the DevOps handbook was written, no one knew that it will become the next big thing, the next thing with so much, such a huge industry of elevated salaries and what's not. So that's not that. We need to look further why DevOps is a success. And to understand why DevOps is a success, we can look at the DevOps infinity loop. DevOps infinity loops go like plan, code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, monitor. That sounds great. But if you are in this thing, in our industry, if you are a developer, that looks very, very familiar. And it looks familiar because it reminds this. It reminds the Agile infinity circle. Plan, design, develop, test, release, feedback. This is very, very familiar, but this is only a half of it. It looks like the thing that is going on is that The ops people now took what we already do, which is plan, design, develop, test, release, feedback, and added more work to our plate. Now we need to take care of deploy, operate, monitor, which are by design ops concerns. Not only that there are ops concerns, at least like half of it, we can see that when DevOps people talk about DevOps, they actually talk about ops. State of DevOps report, the most important report in our industry, in DevOps industry. Unfortunately, I don't think we will see that anymore because the people behind this DORA, DevOps Research and Assessment Institute, kind of despaired and went to other places. Dr. Nicole Forsgren, whose baby it was, is now working for GitHub. And it means that we will have an amazing reports from GitHub, unfortunately, not about DevOps. But this is the one before last. Let's look at how DevOps is measured in the State of DevOps report. Those are the key metrics. Let's see what they talk about. They talk about deploying code. They talk about going from code to production. They are talking about unplanned outages. They are talking about degraded service. Those are ops concepts. It looks like the metric of DevOps have everything to do with ops and nothing to do with dev. Here is something else. State of DevOps report talks about how important it is to invest in new work comparing to unplanned work and rework. And that obviously makes sense. New work is where the money is. And it shows how the elite performers actually do much more new work comparing to the low performers. Again, makes perfect sense. The only question is, what do they mean by new work and rework? Let's look at that. So what is new work? New work is business projects and new features. Makes perfect sense. But then weird stuff starts to pop up. Internal projects, server migrations, that's not really a dev concern. Changes, fine. Unplanned work, support escalations and emergency outages. I mean, it's all very important. We get that, but it's not developers' concerns. Developers' definition of work is we either write new features, which is great, or we do unplanned work and maintenance work, which is bug fixes and refactoring. This is all. No outages, no degradations. All this stuff is not ours. This is the entire DevOps thing is a completely ops concept. I hope I proved that. Now, if you agree with me, or you disagree with me, or you think that I'm just full of bullshit and offensive, which all three options are fine, let's talk about us. Let's talk about the developers. What is definition of done for us? If what DevOps talks about is not about developers, what is about developers? This is one of the attempts to define what is our job. I know there are a lot of issues in with the Manifesto for Software Craftsmanship, with the manifesto itself, with the name, and with the people who is behind it. Fine. I want to put it aside and look at the content. The content, I don't think you can argue with. Look at that. Well-crafted software. We want it? I think absolutely. Steadily adding value. Do we want that? Of course we want that. Community of professionals. Yes, that's important. And productive collaboration with everybody. Again, putting aside all the extra stuff about it, the values of the manifest is actually good. Now, this if we look at these values of this manifest, we want to try and come up with a list of what it means. And I think one of the manifestations of this list, I saw in a talk done by my friend Anton Keks from Estonia. He tried to summarize it in a bunch of rules. What does it mean to be a full stack developer? And a full stack developer is really a developer that cares about everything. So full stack refers to a collection of technologies needed to complete your project. Polyglot developer, you use the right tools. Obviously, you learn the essence and can apply to any language. You still, etc., etc. And then kind of the last bullet down the list, kind of, in the side of it, also deployment. And why deployment? Not because it's your job to do the deployment, but because you don't want to be called during the night, right? So it's kind of a defensive. It's not that it's my job. I'll just do it because I don't want you, the ops people, to bother me. What we see here is a very clear us and them from both sides. And let's see what the developer definition of done looks like. So we understand what needs to be done. Our code is readable, simple, understandable. Our code is easy to deploy. Non-functional requirements are met. We didn't incur any technical debt and even reduce some. Our tests pass. QA took a look and they're happy. That's kind of part of our collaboration with other teams. Team lead took a look and they're happy. That's again something that we feel responsible for the quality of the code. And then product owner took a look and they're happy. Who are the product owners? They are a proxy for a customer, for us. If product owner is happy, that for us means that the client is happy. And this is where you go and say, well, my job here is done. I'm off to whatever I'm doing after work. And you know what? The deployment, well, we understand how, we can explain how our code, it needs to be deployable. Our code is easy to deploy, but really deploying, monitoring, outages, degradations, we just spoke about it. It's just not something that we do. But here is an interesting twist. I think you might remember those type of pictures. And I hope it doesn't make sense to you as much as it doesn't make sense to me. In what sense it doesn't make sense? Because there is no rivalry between developer and tester, and cannot really be, because they both have the exact same goal. And this goal is produced good software. And in that case, tester is a service for a developer, if you wish. They help us to provide software with better quality. And if we agree that that's the case, then what it means is that we, as developers, care about quality. Now, I hope you agree with me that we care about quality, but the next question is, what quality really means? I think it's a moving target. I've been a full-time developer a long time ago, and then I think that the quality standards changed. This is my bank 10 years ago, and you can see by the UI, I probably didn't expect much from it. I have my branch that I went to do my business, but the service itself wasn't very helpful. And there is this announcement part in which once in a while, it was like, well, there is a 12 hours maintenance for update, obviously to ensure quality. Was I kind of bothered by them 10 years ago? Well, not really. I mean, it's fine. I don't need it anyway. I will just go to the branch if I need something. Today, it's completely different. Today, I can switch my bank if the mobile app of the bank is not good enough, especially now when we are all in self-isolation and try to minimize where we go and why we go there. It's really all online, so the requirement for quality changed. Not only that, but also the code quality is just not enough. More and more companies have big data. Big data to a point in which it doesn't make sense to create what we used to call a staging server. When we took a copy of our production, kind of recreated it in-house, loaded the production or demi-production data, and then played with it to ensure quality. The staging server is dead. Now the question is, how can we ensure quality? Without a staging server, how can we make sure that what we produce is actually good enough? And now we have an entire new industry. This industry is about testing in production. You can see some of the terms that might sound familiar for you, like observability and progressive delivery and canary deployments. All those are about ensuring quality in production, because ensuring quality anywhere else is just impossible. One of the terms that I really love here is blast radius. Why it is so powerful? Because it drives the point home that there are casualties out there. We release something, it's so bad that people are suffering. And our goal is to minimize this blast radius and kind of make sure that people are not suffering in production. Because the only place in which quality matters is production. And if we said that for us, the developers, quality matters, it means that we start caring about production. And if we care about production, welcome to on-call. Suddenly, on-call is a part of our job, not because it's a plot, not because someone wants us to work harder, but because quality in production is part of our job, and we have to be there when our code hits production, and this is the on-call. That means that our list is now incomplete. We have now one more item, and we need to make sure that our code is ready to be deployed to production and to be monitored, observed, and everything else. And that means that SRE took a look and they are happy. Who are SRE? SRE stands for Site Reliability Engineer, or as more modern software service reliability engineer. And those are a bunch of engineering aspects of DevOps. SRE kind of implements DevOps. They are the technical people who make sure that we can do actually this stuff of testing in production, going to production, etc. What does it mean SRE took a look and they are happy? Well, that means that we understand how our code is going to be deployed. Spoke about that. That's kind of the bare minimum. That's the brushing your teeth. But there are more. Our build is reliable, repeatable, and fast. Blast radius, casualties. We need to release patch fast. Our build should not fail and should be very, very quick. Our code is stateless and scalable because blast radius, casualties, there is like a load on our system. We need to scale immediately. Our code starts fast and dies fast. start fast. Obviously, we now deploy a patch. We need it in production as soon as possible. But also, we need to kill misbehaving code. So it also has to die fast as well. Our code is observable. It means we need to know what's going on inside it. Relying on angry comments on Twitter is not a very good way to get feedback. Our code supports feature flags. We might want to turn off a misbehaving part of our application without redeploying. Our code backwards and forwards compatible, because backwards, yes, we need to roll back. The client's already upgraded. They need to be able to work with the older code. But also forward compatible, it means that the new clients need to be able to work with old code, not only the other way around. I confused them here, but you got the point. Our code emits event streams that goes back to observability, of course, and generally, this might look familiar to you as well. If you ever heard the term 12-factor app or saw this manifesto, this is exactly about that. This is how we're building application that we will be able to manage in production easily and respond to whatever waits for us there, which is usually bugs, performance degradations, and this kind of stuff. And as time pass, as it happens usually, 12 factors are not enough. There are 14, 16, 18, whatever the modern number of the factors that we need to create highly scalable, resistant cloud applications. So this is now, all this huge list is now a part of our responsibility as well. But not only that, there is one more. Our code is lean, and by lean, I mean saving money. And here again, you might go and tell me, hey, Baruch, this has nothing to do with me. Saving money is an ops concern 100%. All these AWS bills, I have no idea what half of those terms mean, and I don't want to know. This is not my concern. But this is not true. Our code is saving money. Here's just one example. Kafka Summit 2019, Uday from Signal Effects gives a talk about how they achieved 50% reduction in cross-availability zone network costs by deploying Kafka. This is a lot of money, and you will agree with me that deploying Kafka is our decision. This is something that we, the developers, do. So suddenly, costs and revenue is our concern as well. So next time there is a conversation about cutting costs, there are the usual suspects. Let's just do layoffs. And other usual suspects, let's cut the costs. But there is a better solution. And the better solution is writing code, which is lean, switching to serverless, moving to the cloud. So instead of being worried about layoffs, we can just know how to pronounce kubectl and learn how to save money with our code. And now, when we start to think about business, there are many additional questions. For example, we need more happy customers as a business. What the customers want? They want new features. When they want new features, they want them yesterday. Suddenly, you start to realize that those elite performers in the Devops report, those who deploy 2008 times faster than the low performers, they have the upper hand in the business game as well. Whoever releases faster wins the competition. We need to improve our security. What can we do? There are the old ways. We can hire a CISO, so we will have someone to blame, but there is another way to think about that. Reactive security is a lot like stopping distances that you probably remember from your driving lessons. Stopping distances comprised from thinking distance and braking distance. Completely different concepts, but together they help stop the car before it hits the pedestrian. Same with security. When you have a security breach, you need to identify the problem, fix it, and then update your application. And the update part, this is ours. We need to have an app that is capable of being updated fast. This is about us. This is about developers. And more so in the modern world with attacks like a Spectre and the Meltdown, which are impossible to prevent, the only way to go around it is having a race against the attackers, and being able to patch as fast as possible is a critical skill for it. How do we patch? Same thing. We deploy faster. 2008 times faster gives us 2008 times better protection against security threats in the reactive security model. By now, I hope you realize that DevOps is not a plot. DevOps is an evolutionary pressure that created by the business, and it's a mean to an end. It provides better quality, it provides savings, it provides new features, and it provides security. And with this list of achievements, DevOps is here to stay. So regardless of what you think of it, regardless of whether I convinced you that ops people invented it or not, it doesn't really matter. It's here to stay because the business needs it. And if it's here to stay, let's look at it one more time. Now, jokes aside, seriously, try to understand what it is. This is the infinity loop. And it looks like you need to master tons of different specialties in order to be able to do DevOps. You need to be a pro in coding, and you are, but also in testing, but also in building and in operations and in monitoring and in deployment. And you go like, how the hell can I be an expert in all of that? It is impossible. And the good news are, it is impossible. There are no DevOps engineers because no one can be an engineer in all those engineering activities. This is like unicorns farting rainbows. Does not exist. DevOps engineer makes as much sense as collaboration engineer. DevOps is about collaboration between all those different disciplines. And obviously, no one is an expert in everything. Instead, everything that we want to strive is being T-shaped people. Being T-shaped people means we have the wide T that we know a lot of stuff about, a lot of stuff, but we also have a very deep leg of the T that actually provides us with the with our specialty, whatever we do. Now, not only we now realize in the scope of those half an hour, we now realize how DevOps is broad, and it's not only about ops, but I think the people that came up with the idea of DevOps, the Jenkins and the Dora Institute and all that, start to realize that it's broader than only ops. And you can see the latest State of DevOps report, as I mentioned, unfortunately, it's 2019. You can see here how the participants, they have more development or engineering participants in the report that they have DevOps and SRE. They came and they start to speak with the developers about DevOps, and this is pretty exciting. You can see how the metrics now actually talk about development. There is like an entire section of metrics which is about development. This is very cool as well. And almost 10 years after the Phoenix project, Jenkins releases another book. It's called The Unicorn Project. And in the Unicorn Project, it's exactly the same story. It's one person inside the same organization, which is in trouble, invents DevOps and wins with DevOps. But this person now is Maxine, and she is the lead developer. What a change from someone who was 100% ops to someone who is a developer. And this is obviously very, very exciting for us as developers. This is kind of the recognition that developers play a huge part in success of DevOps. And even if we look at those people who kind of implement DevOps, they are suddenly developers as well. You can see that SRE is what you get when you treat operations as if it was a software problem. It's not that the ops people want us to be sysadmins. It's the other way around. They want to be developers. And I think this is pretty exciting. And what we end up in the end is those people that can treat ops problems with software approaches, which kind of a win-win from both sides. So in the end of the day, yes, DevOps is an ops idea, and you can see how ops people came up with it to solve their own problem, but the business liked it because the problem that the ops people had was the business problem, and it is successfully solved because it provides now quality and savings and competitive advantage and security, and this is very cool, and it's not as bad as it sounds. Now, because now everything is code, and we as developers, we love code. We need to follow principles of DevOps and practices of DevOps, and this is something that we do. We follow principles and practices all our life, so it's actually easy. So in the end of the day, it looks like DevOps is okay. It's more than okay. There is nothing to be really scared or upset about, and it's good for us to embrace it. So with that, I'm Agent Baruch on Twitter. This is, as we said, the ChiPy, the Twitter hashtag. DevOps is another one. And I remind you about Jfrog Lomsa's show notes. The slides are there. The video I will upload, all the links to all the stuff I spoke about, all the books and the DevOps report and everything else. And the raffle. Not only you can win a Yoda Lego set, but there is one more prize that I will let Ari speak about. So with that, thank you. And Ari, here we go.
Thanks, Baruch. I really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I'm Ari Waller, and I'm the Meetup Event Manager for JFrog, and we're really excited again to participate as a ChiPy sponsor for 2021. I'll just share a little bit about who we are. JFrog, we are a DevOps software company founded in 2008, and many people know us by our flagship product, Artifactory, which is considered by many as the gold standard for managing your artifacts and dependencies. What many don't know, though, is that JFrog has a free cloud version of our software available for you to use for your products. It works seamlessly with ChiPy, and if you work with Docker images, another bonus. If you work with Docker Hub, our free tier of software includes the capability of serving as a proxy cache. And the best part is, because of the partnership that Docker has with JFrog, in the free tier, you'll bypass the Docker Hub rate limits for anonymous access. So I know that some of you who are using that realize how valuable that could be. So as Baruch had mentioned, for tonight, JFrog is going to give you a chance to enter and win the Adafruit Clue, which is something we give away every month. But we also wanted to add a Baby Yoda Lego set. I'm a big fan of Star Wars Legos. This is what Baby Yoda looks like built. And it's a lot of fun. So that being said, we'll drop the links in the chat later, and a winner will be selected within winners will be selected within 2 business days, and then we'll share the winners on the meetup page and congratulate in social media again. And thank you very much. And I'll turn it back over to you, Ray.
Thank you so much, Ari. I appreciate it. And thanks again for giving those great prizes out to our community. It's really awesome. We really appreciate the JFrog support.
Thank you, Ray.
All right. So with that, folks, we are going to go into a break in which you can take some time, probably be about 10 minutes. So we'll return here at about 7:17, and we'll do our next talk with Sam. So yeah, if you have leave notes in chat, say hi, come to Slack, and don't forget that we have our after party, which I will put back up on the screen right here. Please join us for the after party and to chat afterwards. We'd love to have you. Again, we'll be back in 10 minutes with Sam. Hey, folks, coming back. Just wanted to point over here, I guess over here. Fantastic, right? You're going to have this great little space to meet in. If you've never tried it, I really like it. My team uses it most of the day. It's not a sales pitch. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. I really like that, the gathered town space. We've created our own custom map. That's a pretty cool spot to kind of to hang out and get to know people. Again, you can move around. You can talk to different people. So I encourage you to stay after, not just for Sam's talk, but also because it'll be a fun space to talk about the talks and about everything afterwards. So it's neat. It'll be cool. Use it tonight. Use it next Thursday for project night. But enough about that. Enough about our really cool map and our Pokemon Zoom and all that stuff. I want to bring up next Sam, and we can talk for a little bit before he gets started on his talk. Sam, come on in here.
Hey.
Hey, Sam.
How's it going?
Pretty good. How's it going for you?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
This whole time of like quarantine and you know, maybe the light at the end of the tunnel we're kind of seeing in some of this stuff is kind of it's been a big year. If you're willing to talk about it, are there things that you've found this year that have been brought you center and brought you happiness? It's a tough one, right? We like to really launch those big things. Any hobbies?
That is a tough one. Yeah, I mean, there's been various things that kind of kept us going. I'll admit, I think hitting the year mark since we've been working from home, I'm definitely starting to hit that wall where it's kind of feeling harder to quite be so at peace with things. But I don't know. Our little recent like life hack is we have like a sofa bed, like a couch that turns into a sleeper. So it's like at the weekend we get that out. It becomes like a movie area where we just like chill and watch films, and because it's not so
that's
much else you can do in the
fantastic.
winter.
Yeah, that's like a bed and breakfast that you get to stay at and watch TV. That's fantastic.
Exactly. You just get this little like snug area. That definitely helps.
That's a life hack. I can see a lot of people picking that up. As for hitting the wall, I very much empathize. I think at the end of all of this, we're kind of all, regardless of whether we consider ourselves introverts or extroverts, regardless of how much we thought about socializing before, it's everybody I know is really it's tough. But we got Python to keep us through this. I tell you, keep the fire warm. So maybe I'll ask you a question, which is, how did you get started with Python? What's your relationship with it today?
Yeah, so I got started with Python specifically when I was doing my like maths undergraduate, and I was attending some lecture courses in algorithmic number theory, which I really enjoyed. And that person was a contributor to the Sage Math software. It's like maths library and package built in Python and built on top of Python and some various other things. And so I just found that cool, and I like went to a couple of like the Sage Math days and learned how to use this thing and started contributing to that. So that was my like gateway drug into Python. Used it a fair bit in. So I after maths, I ended up doing some like masters and PhDs in cryptography, where I used it a little bit.
Oh wow! I barely made it through my cryptanalysis course. I struggled with that one. So, do you find like what are the tools? Like maybe I don't want to take away from your talk, but I think your talk is about something a little bit different. So, are there tools that you find maybe in cryptology or in that area that you leaned on during that time?
So, I mean, funnily enough, like at the time, I think I was doing way more, maybe unsurprisingly, academic stuff. And so that was very much like the maths theory piece. So that was primarily in things like Sage. Since kind of making the switch to more of a kind of practical leaning, the cryptography package in Python, PyCast/cryptography it's incredible. I think it's an amazing piece of work.
Oh, I haven't gotten to play with it that much, and I haven't had any need yet.
You almost certainly have used it without realizing, which is probably the best place for cryptography to be. that's where I come from. It's like, yeah, you expose as little of that as possible to people. Like wrap it up nicely and put a bow on it.
One of my coworkers, ex-coworkers now, John Downey, used to give a talk on cryptography and why, like, when you're doing cryptography, the best way you can use it is not to touch it at all, right? It's like really don't get into it. Well, it's fun to hear that you have that kind of a diverse background in your in how you use Python, and it's kind of could hopefully be fun as it leads us in today. I honestly I'm a little curious where you're going to go with this talk. So as you present your slides and you do all this stuff, I'm very excited to see what you come up with.
Okay, it is related, and I'll do that as
All
the
right.
intro. I'll let you know how it's related to all of this.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to be waiting with bated breath, but I'm going to be waiting off screen. So I'll look forward to talking to you afterwards. If we've got time for Q&A, we'll do that then. So, thanks so much, Sam, and have fun. And we're glad to have you here.
Glad to be here. All right, let me move this off to the side. There's a blank terminal. All right, so before I get started as well, I will say I have the chat up in the side, so very much happy if you have like questions anywhere through and you want like a little bit of interactivity, you want me to clarify something, I'm all for that. It's kind of one of the nice things I think about everything being online is that we're sort of all on the same platform here, which is kind of nice. Okay, yeah, so I'm Sam, the co-founder and CTO at OSO. So building on what I was talking about before, kind of how I got into this whole area of building OSO and what we're all about is, so I did this PhD in cryptography, and like I kind of came out of that with these like lofty ideas of applying all this like complex research to to industry and like helping solve these problems, and then kind of realized that a lot of the problems that people really care about aren't academic cryptography research ones. It's stuff which I'd like thought was like solve problems, and I basically kind of went out and spoke to a bunch of companies and people and developers and understood that it was really just a case of the tooling not being great. And so that's kind of what we're about at OSO, is about making better tooling and so that we can put security into the hands of developers. We started with this topic of authorization, which I think has a somewhat of a bad rap as being kind of I don't know, painful or boring or that kind of thing, and is laden with lots of acronyms like RBAC and ABAC. But we're basically trying to make it a bit more fun again and give you the tooling to make this, I don't know, something more approachable and engaging. So basically, I'm gonna do two things. I'm gonna do like a very quick crash course on like authentication, authorization, and some of the patterns I'm gonna speak about. And then the kind of fun bit of this is going to be just some live demo, live coding, that kind of thing. So, authentication, authorization, sometimes just called auth confusingly. These kind of like two core pieces here. So authentication is this process of identifying, who you are. So right, you go to GitHub, you try and access some page, and maybe it pops up and asks you to sign in. Type in username and password, you log in as Samsco89. This is authentication, right? GitHub is identifying who I am. The authorization piece is, now that it knows who I am, like what am I allowed to do inside GitHub? And this one's not necessarily quite as like in your face as authentication. It might be a little bit more subtle. And so, for example, if I try and go to these two URLs in GitHub, one which is for the OSO HQ teams and one which is for the SQLAlchemy teams, I get these two different pages, right? So in the first case, I'm part of the OSO organization. It lets me see the list of teams we have. But I'm not a member of SQLAlchemy, so I get this like little page which says you're not a member, and it doesn't show me any extra information. So this is a piece of authorization, right? So given what GitHub knows about me and the thing I'm trying to do, it's made this decision on whether I should be allowed to or not. And so this is like core of authorization, is giving people access to data, to information, things like that. So the problem, as I just described it, is it's kind of an unstructured one. Like what can people do? What can people see in your application? And I think what this often leads to is people sort of taking somewhat of an ad hoc approach to authorization and just kind of implementing it as code in their app, maybe with some like if and else statements. I'm definitely not trying to pass any judgment here. You don't want to see the versions of my code which are way worse than this. All I'm trying to say is, like authorizations is this one that feels maybe like there's no hope in having a better approach than just like sitting down and writing code. But having spoken to a bunch of people, there's actually a lot of very common patterns that kind of come up and up again and again. So roles is an example of that. So what do I mean by roles? So this is this acronym that you might see around RBAC. It stands for role-based access control. And so if you think about it, right, you have all of your users of the system, of your application, and you have like all of the resources, your repositories, pages, things like that they're trying to access. And as I said, this is kind of like a pretty unstructured problem. Like, how do I decide what they can do? Well, the idea of like applying roles is to say, well, most of these people are actually just like regular members, and maybe there's only a select number of them who actually treat as an admin, and have maybe some special privileges, in particular. Oh, and sorry, and so like once you've done that, kind of grouping, it doesn't matter like how many members or how many admins there are and like who is what. You've kind of just like simplified your problem to just member and admin, like what can they do? And so indeed you can say, maybe members can read and write to some resources and admins can additionally delete those resources. And so we've turned this like potentially unbounded problem into just like assigning some permissions to these two different groups, and obviously putting users into that groups as well. That's kind of the other piece. So again, like here's an example in practice from the GitLab app documentation. So GitLab, like GitHub's kind of source control and some other things on top. And so this is a kind of a common table you'll see in like roles implementations, where you have along the top here the 5 different roles that GitLab exposes. And then there's like this long list of potential actions that people can do. And the check mark is whether this role can do it or not. And so like GitLab is this huge application, right? You can do everything from managing source code, you can do like deployment, you can manage your Kubernetes infrastructure, all the DevOps fun stuff that we just heard about. But it's kind of remarkable that they still only need these like 5 roles. And there's kind of a couple of things I wanted to point out, which like if you're going to go and implement your own role system, I think is like good to apply. So they have a small number of roles, which I think is a good thing to strive for, because otherwise you get these giant matrices and people get confused. And the roles are pretty self-explanatory, right? Like you can read the role name guest and have some intuition about what that should allow you to do. You wouldn't expect that a guest can come into your organization and start like deleting repositories. A reporter, that suggests to me someone that can maybe report issues. Maybe they have like read access to the repository, but not like write access, and kind of on and on, right? And owner can do everything. So, keeping a small number of roles, applying them to like, keeping them to intuitive concepts. And basically, if you need to get more granular in something like GitLab, you don't do it with like additional roles. You do it by like breaking up your resources in a different way. So you can be a developer of a whole organization or a developer of like one repository. Okay, so what is OSO and how does it fit into all of this authorization stuff? So OSO is an open source authorization system, and it's built, as I said at the beginning, for developers. And so it's made up of a couple of pieces. There's like piece 1 is that the core of OSO is a library. This is the thing that you add to your app that replaces all those like if-else statements you saw before, ultimately to make authorization decisions, to decide, can this user do this thing or not? And I'm going to go into way more depth on this in a bit. And as a library, right, you can get it from your package managers. So pip install OSO. And obviously we're going to be talking about Python today, but actually OSO is available across multiple languages. So we built like the core of this in Rust and sort of have language integrations for Python, Node, Ruby, Java, Go, and Rust itself. All right, so that's like piece 1. And the second piece is we try to take all of these like common patterns that we've seen in a bunch of different places, like I just described, things like roles, but a bunch of other ones that have come up. And we've sort of packaged these up as part of this library so that you can just apply them in your app without needing to like do the same thinking around data modeling and stuff like that we've sort of had to do. And this kind of allows you to like focus on the like core logic of how do you want your app to behave, as opposed to like what's a good roles model look like. And so, specifically the, how do you make your app behave thing comes down to our policy language. So we have a declarative language called Polar, specifically for authorization, that allows you to express those like finer details of who can do what in your app. So up at the top here, for example, I have an example snippet of a policy. This says, allow a user to read an organization if the user is in the organization members. So kind of a pretty simple policy here. The really nice thing is all of these inputs here are coming from the application. So, I'm passing in a user class from Python, an instance of a user class from Python. This is matching it to type check it, make sure it is actually a user type, and so on. And so the interface though from the Python side is just this like one method call, oso.isAllowed, and you pass in those instances. So the policy is able to make these decisions over those like attributes. You can call methods, you can do type checks, stuff like that. Okay, so that's how OSO fits in. We sort of have this, I don't know, this kind of dream vision maybe that, OSO is to authorization as something like SQLAlchemy is to SQL. So if you're not familiar with SQLAlchemy, it's this fantastic library and set of tools. It's kind of everything you need to do for SQL in your app. And so that can go from everything from like a Python class-based ORM to just like the core SQL interactions and migrations and stuff like that. And so that's kind of what we want to be for authorization. It's just like everything you might need to do in your app. So, okay, enough talking. Let's see what that looks like. So I have a demo showing this authorization with we have a SQLAlchemy OSO specific integration. Basically, my app, it's like a very simple GitHub API that I built using Flask and SQLAlchemy. And what I'm going to kind of go through is showing what it means, like generically, to add authorization with OSO, and then more specifically, like what does the roles functionality look like. So here is my SQLAlchemy models. So again, for those who aren't like familiar with SQLAlchemy, what it allows you to do is, if you extend this base model, this base class, you can define your like SQL models through, Python class syntax, right? So here I'm defining the users model. You can see it's like getting a database table named users that has these two columns, an ID and an email, and that's kind of it. And the nice thing is it's just a Python class, so I can add methods to it if I want to print things out nicely. So I've got a user, I've got an organization, I've got a repository. Repositories are related to organizations because they belong to an organization, that kind of thing. That's all I've got is the models. And then the app logic itself, as I said, it's like a simple Flask application. The main sort of logic is happening here in like the route handlers. So for example, I have an index that will just like list all of the repositories for a particular organization. And I have my app already running here, so I can interact with that API by making a curl request. This looks good. So I'm hitting this, localhost 5000 orgs, number 2, the repositories, and I'm getting like a list of repositories back. Similarly, I can do for number 1. All right, so right now, like the user that I'm being, this like Sully at monsters.com, is able to see all repositories and all organizations. And similarly, if I did, I think I've got another one for John at Beatles.com. There we go. All right. So what if though I don't want, John at Beatles.com, he's a member of the Beatles, and I actually know that organization 1 is supposed to be the Beatles. So what if I only wanted John to be able to see the Beatles repositories? So this is where I can start using OSO. So basically, what I did in .py is I've instantiated my OSO objects. And basically what that consists of is just creating a new OSO object and loading in my policy files. So that's where I specify my authorization logic. And I'm just going to like attach it to the app. So now that it's on the app, let me go back to the routes.py. Let's make sure I have the current app Flask helper imported, because I'm going to take the current app, get the OSO instance on it, and use this authorized method to see if the current user is allowed to read this organization, right? So I'm fetching the organization from the database, and then I'm going to check it's authorized or not. So once I made that update, no. If I now go and try and access things, I'm going to get forbidden. I'm going to get forbidden for everything because OSO is denied by default. So once I'm trying to authorize things without any policy logic, it's just going to be saying nothing is allowed. Deny everything by default. I can change that. I can write one of those rules like I showed earlier and say allow, and it takes in these 3 inputs: a user, an action, and a resource. And if I just finish with a semicolon, this is basically saying this statement doesn't have any conditions. And these inputs are all just basically like variable inputs, right? It's just a thing that takes in 3 inputs. So with this allow rule, I'm now back to being able to do everything. I've just said allow everyone to do everything. Okay, that's not very useful. So I want to start adding some conditions. So what do I want to do? Well, first of all, let's make sure this user is actually a user. Let's check that the action is the read action. That's the one we used in the route. And this is going to be an organization. And so maybe we want to check, we only want, let's see, we have John at the Beatles.com, Beatles.com. So maybe I want to check that the user's email address ends with Beatles.com. How about that? I think that's right. Let's try that. I've got ends with wrong. We'll see. Oh, okay, we're good. So John at Beatles.com can see everything, but if I go back to the Sully one, Sally's not allowed to do anything. All right, so we're kind of maybe halfway there. John at Beatles is allowed to see too much still. So we can add more conditions. We can make sure the, let's say the organization name is the Beatles. So again, these are just both, the email and the name are just attributes on the user and the organization. And so now John can't see repo 2, but he can see the repos of org 1. All right, so we've just like implemented some authorization in our app to say that, users whose emails is at Beatles.com is allowed to read organizations whose name is the Beatles, which is like okay maybe for this like one-off use case, but poor Sally at monsters.com can't see any of his organizations, and I really don't want to have to like copy, paste, and repeat this for every company. But it does help me. I think the company is spelled Monsters Inc. in this. It does help me maybe illustrate the idea here that you can have multiple rules, and the power of the policy engine is that it's going to do the work of like going through and checking which ones apply and kind of applying these rules. Let's see if Sally can now see things. No, I probably spelled the. Let's have a quick little check. Monsters. Oh, there's no comma. That's incorrect. There we go. Cool. So now Sally can see his repos and John can see his repos, and everyone's happy. All right, but I don't have to do this for every single company that joins and every user who joins and all this kind of stuff. So this is where I might want to do something like role-based access control, right? I don't, the main thing I care about is, do you belong to that organization? Do you have a role in that organization? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kill this. Let's just get rid of what I wrote here. I'm going to check out the version of this where it's complete, and I'm going to reset back to main so that we can see a diff of what I just did. All right, so now we see a bunch more rules, and I'm going to show you basically what I've just done there is like checked out my branch that has also with the roles functionality all added. And you can see the changes that I had to make. So I had to import this enable rules thing in my application startup and enabled it there. And here is kind of where the real magic's happening. So I've imported from the SQLAlchemy roles package this resource role class. And what's that allowing to do? Let me just go see the main version of this. You can see the green here where I've just added this. It's giving me this method that helps me create this role mix-in. And this is like the kind of typical way in SQLAlchemy to kind of create extension functionality and things like that. And so what this mix-in is going to do is basically define all the modeling stuff I need to do to have a role relationship between users and organizations. And then I can just create the actual model down here at the bottom. So now with this, I now basically have a database model that represents users having a role in an organization, and they can be, for example, an owner, a member, or in the billing role. All right, with this in place and with the also enable roles functionality, what's now left for me to do is express who can do what just based on the roles. And so I have these role allow that look similar to the allow. Basically, all I have to do from a permission standpoint now is just say what can a role do? And so this first one, for example, says that if you have an organization role for a particular organization, you can read that organization. And that's it. There's no further conditions because that's already handled by the OSO library. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to change that. And yeah, so so this is kind of all I have to do now is just define a few permissions for what each role can do. And we can now see with those in place, and if I make sure to run my app, I can now do the same things as before. So John can see repos in org1, not in org2. Sally can't see repos in org1, but he can in org2. So we have the same logic from before, but instead of it being manually spelled out in the policy, this is now fully dynamically driven by the information we have in the database. So let me just go through some of them. So this is my fixtures file, which I just create my test data. And in here, I have some of these role relationships. So, think of this as a row in your database, which just says it's many from users to organizations. And this says that John is an owner of Beatles, has that role. And that's kind of like, that's all there is to it. And like with this in place, you can sort of do what I'd say is like 80% of authorization system in a lot of apps. There is like always need to do like a little bit of customization, which is where the kind of policy comes into play. So let's see what that might look like. Okay, so in my repos index, which I'm actually rename to let's say org repos index, because that's kind of better describes what it's doing. But I want to create a true repositories index, which is going to be able to show me all of the repositories for the current logged in user. So bear with me for a second here. So I don't need to filter by organization anymore, but I don't have an organization to authorize. Instead, I want to be authorizing over the entire repository data set, like which ones can this user see? And so we actually have another helper method in from OSO. I think it's from here. Here we go, the authorized model helper. And let's see what this can do. So we don't have this kind of thing anymore. Instead, we're using, this is going to create a, I just use black, it should be fine. So this is going to help us create an auth filter. And it takes a few inputs. So there we go. So it takes in, it needs an instance of OSO, the actor, the user, the action they're trying to do, the SQLAlchemy session, and so on. Virtual hug for me being pestered by the formatting thing. Funny story, which I'm going to tell while I'm typing out this stuff because this isn't that interesting. So I use Windows and have like Windows System Linux. And this morning I woke up and it was suddenly 0 bytes. So basically my entire like Linux VM has just been erased. So I'm currently running off a backed up version of my Linux OS from like October, which is why I don't have anything installed. Okay. So I believe this should be on the, let's say the action is reads, the session is gdos session. What else do we need? We need the model. Okay, so basically what I'm doing here, and you can maybe see some of this, this like returns, this will give us back a filter, like a SQLAlchemy filter that has applied our authorization logic. And so I had to give it in these inputs, like the OSO instance, this should be current user, the current user, the action they're trying to do, like the SQL session, and the database model that you want to filter. So this will give me a filter back, which I can then use in this filter here. So not filter by, but just apply the filter. And what this should be able to do is give me back all of the repositories this user is allowed to see, and not just filtered by like a specific organization, just like more generally. And I believe if I just straight up try and call this, initially, wait, that one still works, of course. But if I just go for repos, oh yeah, I forget this every single time. I don't need an organization ID because it's not. Okay, so I'm not getting back any repositories, which is disappointing. I thought I was going to get them. So basically what's going on is we've asked for all repositories I'm allowed to read, but actually my policy logic is only speaking about organizations. And so I kind of want to show you the kind of thing you can do with OSO is say, well, really all I care about is, a user should be allowed to read a repository. And it's actually fine if the user can read the organization, then let them read all the repositories, just like we had before. So let's say the organization, we're going to pull off the repository. We're going to have to do some type matching here to make sure that the organization is the organization type. And I just want to check that the user is indeed allowed to read that organization. So you can do these kind of like resource hierarchy structures inherit like permissions. So whatever, if you have the read permission on the org, you have the permission on any repository that's like a child of it. And once I've added that, ta-da! So I haven't had to specify an organization, and I get back all the repositories that John can see. And Similarly, if I go and be silly instead, then I'll just get back the paperwork repository. And that's kind of the final thing I want to show. You might be wondering, like, how is this being able to turn into an authorization filter? Basically, these conditions, everything that's happening here, as I said, is like referencing the application data. So we're actually just able to turn it into like a set of constraints or filters that need to be applied. So let me just print out this auth filter. And if I make that curl again and go back, what you'll see at the bottom of the screen here, you see we're checking for, this is the filter we apply. So basically, repositories where the organization ID is organization ID 1 and organizations.id is some input basically, which is coming from the application. So it's basically turned this into a very that doesn't look like the right filter, something like that. This is coming from the user basically. Okay, so that was the main things I wanted to cover. If you would like to find out more about OSO, I'm going to copy and paste these into. I'm going to go throw them in YouTube. I think that should work. No, I'm not signed in. So if it's all right, I'm going to paste them in the.
Yeah, you can go ahead and drop them in. We've got a little private chat. Go ahead and drop them in there, Sam.
Oh yeah, we'll do. There we go. If you could forward those on, that'd be great. Just saves people from trying to type out everything. So basically there's more information around us. So there's like who we are, also the company. There's documentation on what I just showed tonight and more. We have a pretty fastly growing Slack community around the open source library and also just generally around the topic of authorization. And yeah, all of this I showed tonight is open source, so you can go and see it on GitHub as well. So yeah, hope everyone enjoyed, and I'm definitely happy to take any questions from kind of any angle. Authorization, security, cryptography, Python, Rust, all is good.
Awesome. Well, let's see if I can center myself here. I thank you so much for your talk. This is fantastic. It's nice to get an insider's take on sort of the center of an idea. So I really appreciate you being willing to share your time with us.
No
As folks kind of type in your chats over in this, I forget, probably on the other side of Sam over there. Go ahead and type your messages in. It looks like we do have one coming in now, but yeah, we'll kind of go through some questions here for you. But yeah, thanks again for giving your talk.
Yeah, no problem. I'll say as well, like I'd also happily, if people just have general like comments or like things they learn about the talk tonight, I'd also like love to see those. It's always nice to hear if I don't know, the stuff I presented went through.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So first question: is there support for serializing the polar logic in the database rather than a separate text file? So this is a great question. The short answer is no, and I'll kind of explain the rationale. Like you could, but you shouldn't, basically. So we generally treat like your authorization logic as like source code, right? So it lives alongside your application. It's in a file in your application, and you develop on it, you maintain it, you test it in the same cadence as your application. And that's pretty important so that things don't get like entirely out of sync. So you add a new route, but you haven't added the new policy, or like vice versa. Now, the exception is that like obviously there's a lot of authorization stuff that you do want to be dynamic and changing, but that stuff goes in the database. So when the kind of power of like say the roles model is I can assign someone a role, I can add and delete them from that role, and their permissions are like instantly changed. Right, so that is how I like handle dynamicism in my app, is the logic of like what an admin can do inside my application, what a member can do inside my application, like how I determine that based on my application data. Mostly static, it's like your application code. If you have inputs, be them a role or be them, I don't know, something else, like maybe you have you have like business hours are 9 to 5, and you don't want anybody. I know you're really strict with employees, and you don't want anybody working outside business hours because you want them to have like healthy work-life balance. So you reject anyone from working outside those hours. And over time, you have to add new time zones as you go remote to deal with quarantine or something. Then, sure, put that information in the database or somewhere else, maybe as configuration values, environment variables, something like that. And your policy can be dynamic based on that, but not necessarily the source code. I would say that's kind of like the 99% case. If you do need, there are cases where you do want people to be able to customize their own logic. Maybe you want to allow users of your application the ability to like customize and tweak how permissions work inside the whole system for like the members of their organization. In that case, you can totally put like polar rules and logic and stuff in, say, the database and load it as a string on runtime. It's just I wouldn't say it was like the happy path. It's kind of power, but with great power comes great responsibility, kind of thing. But yeah, it's a great question.
I've got a question. I imagine that you probably, maybe a starter question would be, as you get started on a project like this, or as you're sort of building this kind of feature out, like what we have some budding library workers and developers, people trying to create Python not just for themselves but for other people as well. Do you have any lessons learned from building up that kind of apparatus from the ground up? What would you have done differently in this project?
So yeah, I think the thing that's been the sort of the most fun and the most valuable is anytime. I guess I'll rewind a sec. I'm not a Python expert. I do not know the Python ecosystem inside out. I don't do it full time like as a day job. So there is a ton of stuff that I don't know about, like SQLAlchemy, for example. I'm definitely a relative newbie on SQLAlchemy. One of the things that has been awesome is seeing people come into the OSIS Slack and kind of talking about the frameworks, from someone who knows the framework inside out, but maybe it's like you sort of get that combining of opinions of, they know SQLAlchemy or Django inside out, and we're kind of like bringing our authorization knowledge or like how that's supposed to apply and kind of trying to get the two coming together. That process has been a lot of fun, just like trying to work out like what is the best way to adapt our software to work in the frameworks people are familiar with. I think there's a lot more we could have done with that, and just sort of engaging more with our users and kind of understanding how they're using it is something I think you can never do enough, basically.
So I'm going to take the liberty and ask one last question, which is, hopefully a good question for you. Having a cryptology background, I'm going to take one thing off the table. So aside from cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain, what's the least understood thing about crypto that you think people should understand better? Because I don't think anybody understands crypto and blockchain in the sense that it makes sense. So let's not talk about it. Is there anything else? I'm trying to think of.
That's such a good one.
I remember like going through Pollard's row and all these terms. I could never figure out what the practical applications were.
It's funny you should mention that one specifically, because one of the things I did in my PhD was cryptanalytic attack on a protocol that was going to be used for like MasterCard credit cards and stuff, that was using a variant of Pollard row. Breaking elliptic curve crypto systems using that kind of number theory. So that's some practice.
That's a fairly good practice. I think understanding the nature of finance and the limited numbers that exist in the world is probably a pretty good one, I guess.
Yeah. But least well understood error cryptography.
Maybe if I could convince you, leave it in maybe our Slack. I don't know if you're in our Slack today, but if you want to come and drop it, I think that'd be a pretty fun one. I'd love to put it out to you and just have you think about it. But you've given us more than enough wisdom for today, and I've asked you a terribly goofy question. So thank you so much.
It's a great one, though.
Well, Sam, you've been a delight. It's been a pleasure having you, and I hope I hope you come back and speak again if you ever get the chance. I really appreciate it.
It's been fun. Thanks for having me.
And so with that, I'm going to take Sam out of the picture, and I'm going to wish everybody a wonderful night. Again, thanks for being here. We are about to head off, and we're going to go hang out at Chippy Town. I will put this up on the side so you can see it. We're not going to be back in a few minutes. We're going to go right there. We're going to head over there afterwards. If you have any questions or concerns, if you have anything that you need to reach us about, reach out. We'd love to talk to you. ChiPy is a great group. I've been a member and an organizer for about 6 years. It's fantastic. And chippy.town is a great place to go to meet other people and kind of get to see how we work. So I really do hope you'll stop by. I'd love to talk with you myself. And yeah, just have a great Python evening. We'll see you on the other side of tomorrow.